couple of things are coming up for me, and I'm going to pause really quick and let you all know if you're watching this video, make sure that you hit the thumbs up video to let folks know that you are digging it, and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. So here's what's coming up for me. There is this thing that we kind of know in our bones that our learning never stops. Either our learning about the world or our learning about ourselves. And what I'm hearing from you is the reassurance that as part of the life journey and living, there's also this learning that always has, and we have to be open to it.
Yeah. And we can't be fooled by these scripted understandings of what being 50-something is supposed to be. As in, if you reach a certain chronological age, there's certain mistakes that you're not supposed to make. And don't you know that I did that? Don't you know that that was part of my judgment, was because of my age, was connected to my age? And I had to remind myself, and it still comes up, I haven't reached any plateau. I've had some growth around it. I've gotten better. I've forgiven myself. I'm still working on that. And so when that thought comes up, I dismiss it, and I remind myself of the other ways in which I've debunked the stereotypes and the scripts about how I'm supposed to be. I'm not supposed to, according to some laws, I'm not supposed to be necessarily shaking my tail feather at 2:00 in the morning at some club, getting my entire life.
Let me tell you about Craig Washington on the dance floor. You don't want none.
Thank you.
Been there, done that. You don't want none.
Because that's something that, and again, we have to like really examine and resist these confining scripts about what we're supposed to be like based on our age, and this sort of placement and confinement. Because that's one of the spaces where I receive joy. And it's not about trying to be anything other than I am. I never feel more authentically Craig, authentically 59, is when I am being turned out by Ron Pullman at First Friday at the Eagle, right? Wow. So and I remind myself, okay, so Craig, that's you. That's your. So why not train that, or why incorporate that? Again, it's about reintegration. So that means that be open to making mistakes. Be open to the hard lessons. And that was one of the hardest lessons I've ever experienced. Wow. But it also, it prepared me, because it was a second important relationship this year that I ended. And one of the things that gave me the wherewithal to end it was, again, what my friends demonstrated for me, what that previous romantic relationship demonstrated for me in terms of what is no longer acceptable, what I will not put up with. And again, arriving at 59, really? This is in my personal and professional life, there's been a turning. And so this is a new chapter.
Yes.
And so I feel, and I was born on the I guess 1960. Okay. And so there's a way in which my age, kind of shifts with the numerical turning, right? So turning of a decade, I'm literally at a new decade of my year, on the year, a new decade of my life. So I feel symbolically and spiritually that this is a new chapter. It means that there are certain things that I allowed that don't work, that no longer have a place.
So I am going to take, I'm gonna put a pin in something, because there's the other thing that when we kind of got into this that you mentioned. I want to talk about the importance of friends and having a circle, but I'm going to go back in time before we do this, because I'm wondering how life experience has also helped you to navigate the importance of that. So I'm going to come to it. Okay. But I wrote down this particular quote from the AJC. It was an article about you called "How Purpose Saved This Longtime AIDS Survivor's Life." And so I'm going to read this piece of the quote from the article. It was such a big deal and it carried such a load of fear that you didn't want to even refer to it by name. To say it meant death. I was scouring for treatment, a line to suggest I might survive. I remember not finding that line. Here's the part that I was like, wow. So the author wrote that in spite of that fear, Craig could hear a voice in his head reassuring him that he wouldn't die. That time, so this is 1985. And you were living in New York.
Epicenter.
Talk to us about that time and what our community was experiencing. I know that from Craig's perspective.
Okay. It was so ironic, Johnny, because I felt that in some ways I was just beginning. I was 25. Just 5 years prior, I had put the conversation on the family table. So
I read that. That's in the piece. Read that.
Debunking coming out as a disclosure of previously unknown information that clearly wasn't the case with my family. It was just like, okay, I'm ready to talk.
Right.
Because I'm tired of carrying this.
Right.
So I'm unloading.
Right. Just sit it here.
Or as a Dodie Muse once proclaimed, it's for you to deal. I love the way Duncan says that.
Is it?
And so I felt like that that's youthful exuberance and openness and excitement wasn't completely obliterated, but there was a shadow cast upon it. So it was terrifying. It was considered largely a death sentence. The naming it, actually, it's a reference to my friend Bruce, who I met at Reese Park. It was around Memorial Day weekend, around that time, in '85. And I woke up with swollen lymph glands. Never had them before. And when Bruce saw me on the beach, and so when you're on the beach, you're just completely illuminated.
Yes.
So So he could clearly see it, and he said that was the first sign of it. And I remember that it resonating with me. Just the fact that he didn't say AIDS, he said it. And that carried for me because I was so afraid, and I was afraid of being afraid, so I feigned the kind of nonchalance. And I said, oh yeah, I know. I wasn't ready to claim that. But I felt like I needed to just swallow it and find a way to survive. When I talk about scouring and searching for evidence that I was going to make it, a few weeks later, I met my doctor's office, and I'm flipping through. There was a Time magazine, and the cover story was about the epidemic. And I'm looking at the article, okay, where does it say that this person is still healthy? And there was no evidence. And I had somehow thought, okay, well, maybe if I just figure out a way to hold on. And there was one moment where I'm in my living room. I was living in the Bronx with my roommates then, and I had the house to myself. And I had just gotten off the phone with someone to whom I shared some of my symptoms. By then, I was experiencing thrush, the yeast infection, oral yeast infection, and some other symptoms. And he said, oh, I know someone who had that, and he died about a month ago. And shortly after that, the conversation ended. And that, I'm sitting with that. And that's just echoing for me. And Johnny, it's hard to describe without, I don't want it to sound like some sort of James Earl Jones voice of God movie gimmick, but there was a presence.
Yes.
That came in that room, and the best way that I can convey it is that it was both within and beyond me. And that's the way that I do experience God, or what we call God, or the gods, or the deity, as a larger presence that's a part of me. But it was a presence with a message that was leading me.
Yes.
And that message said, and I heard it, internally heard it, like, you are not, this is not going to kill you. You're not going to perish. And it wasn't, assuring of immortal life.
Right.
But what it was saying in its essence, at its core, is be not dismayed, do not fear. Hang on. And I hung on to that. And the way that I lived my life, from clearly receiving that message and being open to receiving that and believing that and holding on to the faith that no matter what happened, no matter what manifestations, not a day, not a moment after that did I think that this was going to kill me. So even when that was 85. By 94, 95, I experienced my first opportunistic infections. I'm losing weight. It's the mid-90s, so I'm giving you Afrocentric. I'm giving you billowy garb to disguise the weight loss. I had friends, and these were folks that I work with in the community, AIDS workers like Paul Plate, who said to me years after, "Oh yeah, I remember that time. I remember you got sick. We thought you were going to lose you." And I had no idea because Johnny, I wasn't going nowhere.
Right.
Now I was self-conscious.
Right.
And I didn't want people to see me looking sick. I remember reading a piece, an interview, Sylvester, one of the last interviews Sylvester did, and he was talking to a Voice reporter, and he talked about living with HIV, and how he would look, and being concerned about looking sick. And so that stuck with me. I think that when I think about what kept me aloft, in addition to my own faith, because I get asked that a lot, like, how'd you, 30, how many years? I'm clear that from the start, I will say this, some of that is beyond me. There were people that were, they were better at discipline and self-care than I was. They might not have had as much sex as I did. There were some that had less, some that had more. And they're gone. And they fought just as hard or harder than me. So I know that it's just not a function of my whatever, efforts, courage, what have you. I think that I was placed. I think that's part of my purpose. So however long that I'm supposed to be here, it's about living out that purpose. And I clearly feel that an essential aspect of my purpose, an essential role that I was born, created, brought here to play, is to tell stories, is to illuminate, is to use my life and what I see and my vision, and to share that. To be some sort of catalyst.
Yes.
So whatever that is, however that, whether that's up in some AIDS service organization, I'm not going to do that again.
Right.
But I'll always be involved in some kind of